Okay, we are here for our weekly Bible study. We're continuing to, what would be the right word? Meander, slog, lumber through the life of Jesus. And according to my incredible notes, we're ready to start in Matthew chapter 7. The tail end of the Sermon on the Mount, and depending on what all happens today, we'll probably finish it up and move on to something completely different. So, Matthew chapter 7, verse 13. The narrow and wide gates, enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Actually, let's keep on trucking here. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. Now, we go over to Luke 6, verse 43. We find Luke's account of a similar passage. Luke 6:43. No good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. You should go ahead and just highlight that verse if you haven't done that yet. Luke 6:45, the tail end there. The mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Okay? Then, well, just, yeah, sure. So stick your finger here in Luke. Go back to Matthew 7. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform miracles? And then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, evildoer. Then, back in Luke chapter 6, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? As for everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice, I will show you what they are like. They are like a man building a house, who dug down deep and laid the foundation on rock. When a flood came, the torrent struck that house, but could not shake it because it was well built. But the one who hears my words and does not put them into practice is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. The moment the torrent struck that house, it collapsed and its destruction was complete. Then back in Matthew 7, similar passage. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Okay, so in the verses that we've read, both in Matthew and in Luke, Jesus is kind of wrapping up the Sermon on the Mount. Especially in Matthew, Matthew presents the rest of Jesus' teaching in 4 pairs of contrasts. He looks at 2 different ways, 2 different trees, 2 different claims, and 2 different builders. Okay, so we'll talk about each one of those and throw some Luke in there as well. Okay, so there are 2 different ways What's the gate for one way?
Narrow, unwide.
There's a great big wide one, and there's a little skinny narrow one. Who goes through which one? How many people go through the wide gate?
Many.
Many people. Because why? Because it's easy to see, plenty of room, it's huge. Okay? But there is also a narrow gate. And what Jesus says is that the gate that is wide with this big, broad road leads to destruction. The other gate and the narrow road lead to life. Now, you might have a picture in your head that, so, okay, in my flannel graph brain from 1970 something, okay, there is a picture of the big gate, wide, beautiful, attractive, fun, lots of lights, confetti, glitter, all that kind of stuff. Everybody wants to go through this gate because what they find as they go through the gate is that this road is big and smooth and easy, and you barely even have to pay attention to walk on it. This gate is much smaller, harder to find, and what we find when we go through the gate is that it's not necessarily just a little skinny goat path kind of a gate. That's maybe what we've always sort of imagined. But the fact that it is narrow has less to do with the size of the gauge of the path than it does how challenging the path is. So this is like a big fat green light, super smooth, super easy. This is like the quadruple black diamond path over here, where when you go through it, it's going to be challenging. It is not just, a stroll through a park on a paved path beside the pond. It is something that is challenging and requires your full attention, and the payoff is where you end up. On the broad path, you end up at destruction. On the narrow, challenging path, it leads to reward. Now, on the narrow path, it's not just that the path itself is difficult, but the path is also full of persecution. There are going to be people who are after you, people who try to throw you off the trail. You're going to get beat up for it. You're going to be mocked for it. Jesus says, stay on the path, keep moving forward. It is the path that leads to life. So, you have these two options in front of you. Which way will you choose? Broad, easy, narrow, challenging. That's the way of discipleship. You want to be a follower of Jesus, it will not be easy. Paul says in one of his letters, if you are a Christian, if you are a follower of Jesus, you will face persecution. Period. And not you might, but you definitely will. Now, a couple of the commentators on this passage ask a weird question. At least that's weird to me. Why does the road come after the gate? Because what you would expect is that the road leads up to the gate, and the gate lets you into the city, the final destination. And there's some folks that are totally perplexed by this, like, it doesn't make any sense. Why would Jesus say that? I don't think that's hard at all. At least not to me. Maybe it's because I'm not quite right. But
so what is their question?
Why is the gate in front of the road? Why isn't the gate at the end of the road? Okay, here's my simple answer. The simple answer is that They're already inside the city when Jesus is telling the story. They're in town. Every city that was worth anything had a wall, and there were gates that led into and out of the city. It seems pretty simple to me that the gates are the way out of where you are to the next destination. So you get to choose. Am I going to wait in line for my turn over here in this narrow goat path? Or am I going to go through the super highway fast pass gate over on this side? I don't know where this one's going. That one looks like it's pretty tricky, but this one seems pretty easy. I don't know that I've nailed that, but that seems sort of simple.
Well, in my past, I have had to ski a couple of those black diamonds, and they were hard, and I'm not sure I want to be that hard again. So if that's what you're describing, it's going to be tough, isn't it?
Yes, but one leads to the edge of a cliff, and one leads to the lodge where the hot chocolate is flowing free.
Ah, you got me there.
Okay, so that's the first comparison. Which way? The big, broad, smooth, easy way, or the narrow, probably going to be difficult, definitely challenging way? Leads to destruction, leads to life. That's what Jesus throws out to the crowd. Which way do you want to go? Well, duh. Of course, we would not pick the broad gate, Jesus. We would pick the narrow gate. That's good. Okay, so the next comparison is out in the orchard. It's a comparison of trees. Thorns and thistles are compared with grapes and figs. Obviously, grapes grow where?
Vines.
On a grapevine. Where do figs grow? On a fig tree. I watched, this is totally off subject, but I watched an episode of some Emerald, Cooking with Emerald thing that's on one of the Roku channels. And one day he did figs from Louisiana. There's all different kinds of figs, more than I would have ever imagined, and he made everything with figs. It was pasta with figs. Like, oh, I don't know about that. Anyway, I just thought it was bizarre that there were so many different types, and that they grow them in Louisiana. I didn't expect that. But they clearly grow on trees, not on a thistle bush. I got thistles at home, lots and lots of thistles. They don't make anything nice. When Jesus is talking about thorns and thistles in other places, other parables, thorns and thistles are those who won't acknowledge or accept the hard, narrow way. They want what's easy. They want to take advantage of, well, kind of like the thistles in my barn lot. I didn't start out with a half an acre of thistles. I started out with somebody's horse or somebody's goat that came to visit, dropped it, dropped it, and it grew, and then it spread. Not because I planted it, because it just took advantage of the open space. Jesus says in Ezekiel 13. Let's go find that. If you can find Ezekiel. Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel.
He never candy coats it. He never makes it enticing.
He's not a salesman.
Oh, yeah.
He's a truth teller.
And that's hard.
So the people who are thorns and thistles are teachers who are leading people astray. Over in Ezekiel 13, the prophet Ezekiel is talking about false prophets. The word of the Lord came to me, it's verse 1, Son of man, prophesy against the prophets of Israel who are now prophesying. Say to those who prophesy out of their own imagination, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to the foolish prophets who follow their own spirit and have seen nothing. Your prophets, Israel, are like jackals among ruins. You have not gone up to the breaches in the wall to repair it for the people of Israel, so that it will stand firm in the battle on the day of the Lord. Their visions are false, and their divinations a lie. Even though the Lord has not sent them, they say, the Lord declares, and expect him to fulfill their words. Have you not seen false visions and uttered lying divinations when you say, the Lord declares, though I have not spoken? Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Because of your false words and lying visions, I am against you, declares the sovereign Lord. My hand will be against the prophets who see false visions and utter lying divinations. They will not belong to the council of my people or be listed in the records of Israel, nor will they enter the land of Israel. Then you will know that I am the sovereign Lord. Because they lead my people astray, saying, peace, when there is no peace. And because when a flimsy wall is built, they cover it with whitewash. Therefore, tell those who cover it with whitewash that it's going to fall. Rain will come in torrents, and I will send hailstones hurtling down, and violent winds will burst forth. When the wall collapses, will people not ask you, where's the whitewash you covered it with? Okay, so thorns and thistles. Jesus is condemning both the people who will just soak up any word. They ought to be looking for grapes and figs. They want good fruit, but they're willing to let anybody plant anything that comes along, including false prophets like Jeremiah speaks against. They declare all kinds of things. Oh, the Lord has told me. I have seen in a vision. It's going to be good. It's going to be peaceful. We're going to be safe. The Lord is just going to bless us no matter what we do. And God says, I didn't say that. I didn't tell you that at all. You're making this stuff up on your own, and I'm not going to bless it. You can say whatever you want. I have nothing to do with this. They declare peace and safety when there isn't any. These prophets are giving bad directions with the worst consequences to the people. So people in the crowd don't listen to those prophets. When they come and they try to plant thistles and thorns, they're going to sprout up really easy. Don't believe it. Don't accept it. You have to be a little more discerning. I think it's interesting that here in this Ezekiel passage that he talks about the wall that's being built up, and he's going to send wind and hailstones, because in a couple paragraphs he's going to talk about building up a house, and he's going to send a flood and wind, and it's going to beat against it, and it's going to knock everything down. I don't know if Jesus had that in mind, but it's kind of cool how it works out that way.
Is this where the term whitewash comes from? I mean, we use it today sometimes.
Well, it is a very specific house application. You throw the whitewash to make everything look fresh and clean.
So it's a government phrase.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus called the Pharisees whitewashed tombs, and that's right.
I think the point of the whitewash is you can throw it up on an ugly old building and make it look pretty nice.
Right.
The floor is rotten, the plumbing is corroded, the electrical work isn't anything on the inside, but from the outside, oh, that looks really nice.
Lipstick on a pig.
Lipstick on a pig. Okay, so Jesus has compared ways, he's compared fruit or trees. Now there is a contrast of claims. Many people will say, what?
Lord,
Lord, Lord. And he'll say, I don't know who you are. Get away from me. You call me that name. You claim that I'm the Lord, but your actions dictate otherwise. Obedience is the key. You can approach him with the most glorious, extravagant, luxurious titles. O Son of the Most High, Eternal, and Holy God, I come before thee humbly. Really? If you really believed any of that, you wouldn't behave the way that you have all week long and come to me now and say, you're the Lord of my life.
This is one of the verses that has frightened me for many years.
I believe it should keep all of us sort of on our toes. Pastors, elders, Sunday school teachers, choir members, whoever.
Regular folks.
What I get from this is that at some point, when it's that day, there will be preachers who led churches of hundreds or thousands of people, and Jesus will say, you had nothing to do with me. What you built was all your own. You didn't listen to me. You didn't submit to me. I was not actually Lord. Go away. And we will watch as this glamorous celebrity pastor is not headed into heaven.
So he's not going to heaven.
I think that's what that means. Many will say, Lord, Lord, and I'll say, I didn't know you. But if we're obedient to God, if we say that he is the Lord of our life and we act like he is the Lord of our life, then Jesus will say, that one's mine, that one's mine, that one's mine. They're all in. The key, what is the key here? The doing, obedience. Okay, if you're going to say that Jesus is Lord, then you had better act like Jesus is Lord. This probably never happens at your house or when you had kids in your house, but in one breath they will hug and squeeze you and say, I love you, and 2 minutes later they're throwing a tantrum saying, I'm not going to do this, I hate you. Well, one of the pseudo verses that I claim at our house all the time is, if you love me, keep my commandments.
Say that again.
If you love me, keep my commandments. If you love me, do what I say.
Yeah.
That's what Jesus says is the real mark of love and devotion. You say you love me, act like it once in a while. Do what I've told you to do. The people who say, Lord, Lord, are right, because that's what he is. Even Satan would recognize that Jesus is the Son of God and the Lord of Lords and King of Kings. The difference is he doesn't act like it. He rejects that authority. There has to be recognition of his authority that comes with obedience to that authority. Don't just say, you're the boss, you're the Lord of my life, and then go do whatever you want. Don't be like those people. Do we need to move on? Are you ready? Or do you have a question or a comment?
I'm good. I'm good. I don't know about everybody else.
Well, if you're good, I'm good.
Okay, so ways, fruit, claims. The last contrast is between builders and homes. Again, sort of an appearance thing. They may look good enough on the outside in dry, sunny weather where the birds are singing and the sun is shining. It's a beautiful day. But as soon as there's clouds in the sky and the rain starts coming and the wind starts blowing, that's when you figure out how well the house is actually built. Storms reveal the truth. There's probably a book idea in there. Storms reveal the truth about the building. The fool chooses the easy way. Digging a foundation, that's going to be such a hassle. I hate the shovel. That's such an awful tool. I'm just going to build it. This is nice and flat and smooth and dry right here. I'm just going to build my house on top of this. Or somebody says, well, I'm not really sure what all can happen, so I'm going to dig a foundation deep. I'm going to make sure it's secure, and then I'll build my house on top of that. The first guy has saved all kinds of time. He's probably saved all sorts of money. It went up fast. It was easy. It looks really nice. But as soon as adversity comes, rain, wind, flood, earthquake, whatever, the quality of that building is revealed. The fool chooses the easy way. The wise person chooses the lasting way. Again, the idea is either you're all in with Jesus or you're not in at all.
So the winds and water is adversity.
It's anything. Persecution, difficult circumstances, drought, famine,
Illness.
bad marriage, rotten kids, illness, financial woes, whatever it is that comes along.
Do you know that this is the first time anybody's told me that?
Well, it's a good thing you're here this morning then.
It is. They just told me rain and water.
I mean, how many times have we seen people that we thought really were solid in their relationship with Jesus, and things go the wrong direction, and you kind of wait to see, are they going to make it? Are they going to bail?
So I can attest to that. I've been a Christian since I was 14 years old. Always in church, Sunday school, Bible studies, the whole thing. When my husband died suddenly, I found out just how weak my foundation was. And God in His graciousness took me to a different church that really taught the Word expositorily. And then a friend gave me the chronological one-year Bible, and I started reading it, and over a couple of years, I am on a more solid foundation than I have ever been on. And it is because I thought I was in the Word, but I wasn't. And I can attest to the solid foundation that comes from really being in the Word. It really changed me.
I appreciate you sharing that. We're either all the way in, we've built on the right foundation, we are solid, or it looks nice. One of the things that shows up in my Facebook feed, reels all the time, are housing inspections. In brand new construction, they go through and say, that's not how that's supposed to be. And that's not how that's supposed to be. That should never have been done like that. It looks okay, and people have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for their brand new home. But, you know, the crack in the brick goes all the way from the foundation all the way up to the roof line. Like, that shouldn't be that way. That shouldn't be that way. Where cleanouts have been glued shut and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. It looks okay on the outside, but further inspection shows it really wasn't built the right way. We either choose radical submission to the Lord Jesus alone, or we choose rebellion, self-centeredness, and Jesus says damnation. Okay? The mark of genuine believers is not what they say. The mark of genuine believers is what they do. Words are important. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. I don't believe that. Words do have impact. They do have weight, but they are not the only measure of authenticity. I've watched all kinds of people in movies that have delivered, you know, incredible, inspiring speeches, but in real life, those people they're just pretenders.
He's just memorized somebody else's.
Yeah, somebody else's words. And to quote to quote a band from the 80s, more than words is what Jesus wants to hear from his people. He doesn't want to just hear, Lord, Lord, I love you. Lord, I lift your name on high. I worship and adore you. It's more than just that. It's action that goes along with the words. Okay? Any comments before we move on? Questions? Everybody out in online land is okay?
There's nobody there.
That must be they have nothing to respond with. Okay, well, let's look at, I'm going to say it's Matthew 7, verse 28. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching, because he taught as one who had authority and not as their teachers of the law. Okay. Yeah, we'll do that first. Okay, so when the crowds comment on Jesus' authority as a teacher, that he speaks as one who has authority, it's a comment not just on the way he delivers the material, but on the material itself. What he has to say and how he says it. Because they're used to rabbis and teachers who will say, well, Rabbi Gamaliel told us, Rabbi Hillel once said, it's all quotes. They're deriving their authority from somebody who has been dead for 200 years or 500 years. When Jesus teaches, when Jesus speaks, he didn't say things like that.
First person.
Yeah, it's because he is the Word. He is truth revealed. He just talks. He just has authority from God. It does include the manner of his teaching, the style of his teaching. I look forward to hearing him teach and speak, because I think it's going to be not like anybody else I have ever heard. But it also has to do with the content. He has been teaching as the Messiah, speaking from himself. Nobody else can claim what he claimed. Nobody else can teach what he taught. Nobody else will lead as he led. And I'm not sure that the crowds really understood the difference, but they absolutely recognized it. Man, he's that Jesus. I just love to listen to him teach. He's just so different. It's just so good. Well, what is it? I don't know. It's just really different. Again, I'm not sure they understood everything about it, but they definitely recognized that Jesus taught with authority. And then in verse 28, there's this transitional statement. When Jesus had finished saying these things, that is a specific formula that Matthew uses a handful of times in his gospel to indicate like a new section is about to occur. It's like a chapter heading or something like that. So all the way from Matthew 1 up to verse 29 of chapter 7, we're looking at Jesus' authority as a teacher. The way that he speaks, what he teaches, it's very different. And then at this point, we're going to see that authority translates into other spheres of life as well. He's not just a great teacher. He doesn't just have authority there. His authority goes into other places. Okay. In 11:1, there is another one of those statements. When Jesus had finished saying these things. After Jesus had finished instructing his disciples, he went on from there to teach and preach to the towns of Galilee. So the scene is set there for John the Baptist to ask his question in just a little bit. Are you the coming one, or are we supposed to look for somebody else? Okay. The next one happens in a couple of chapters later in verse 53 of chapter 13. When Jesus had finished these parables, he moved on from there. Coming to his hometown, he began teaching the people in their synagogue. Okay, so Jesus goes back to Nazareth. He is rejected in his own hometown after he has done all kinds of teaching in parables wherever he has been. Okay, so that's the third big section. Then over in chapter 19, verses 1 and 2. When Jesus had finished saying these things, he left Galilee and went into the region of Judea to the other side of the Jordan. Large crowds followed him, and he healed them there. Okay, he's leaving the Galilee region, which we've said is more than just the shores. It's kind of this whole area up here. He's leaving there to go south. He's going to go into Judea. He's going to go into the Transjordan, the area across the Jordan River. That's what the Transjordan means, across the Jordan, where he's going to teach and preach and heal. It will be the final push of ministry before we get to his last week of life, which Matthew starts that in Matthew 26. When Jesus had finished saying all these things, he told his disciples, as you know, the Passover is 2 days away, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified. Okay, so that's the last one of these major transitions. When Jesus had finished saying these things, it's the next chapter. It's the next major piece. So after 3 years of ministry in up to Matthew 26, the cross is right there in front of him. He's in his final week of life. It's just days before his arrest and his death and his resurrection. Okay, so that's how Matthew sort of divides up his gospel in these 5 big sections that are transitioned with when Jesus had finished saying these things. Okay.
Do you think that's because Matthew was a tax collector, but he had to keep books or something? I mean, keep records, you know? I don't know.
Well, that's a very organized way. I'll be curious to watch the movie in heaven about how Matthew did this. I mean, if he sat down at his desk and said, all right, if I were going to write down everything that Jesus did, how would I do it? Oh, I think I would do it in these 5 big movements. I don't know.
You can probably just ask him when you get there.
Sure. I could ask him. I'd rather watch it, though. You know, because I'm my son's father, you know, I don't really thrive on interpersonal communication. I'd rather just watch a screen and see it happen in front of me. Couldn't talk to somebody. That'd be way too easy. It's weird. Okay. Any questions or comments about any of that so far? All right. Very good. Well, Matthew chapter 8 then. Now that I've had you flip all the way through the entire gospel. Okay, Matthew 8 verses 1 through 4 is an account that we have already talked about. Jesus heals a man with leprosy. It's also in Mark 1 and Luke 5. It's about a third of the way back in my notes from where we are right now. So we're really ready to start with chapter 8, verse 5. Jesus encounters a centurion who has some pretty amazing faith. There are scholars that feel like this is the same event that John talks about in chapter 4 of his gospel. It is not a centurion and a servant. It is a man with a son. Son and servant are sometimes used interchangeably. It can mean just the same thing. There are some similarities, but we're going to go ahead and treat it like it's not the same. It's in Matthew chapter 8, verse 5, and Luke chapter 7, verse 1. Should we read both of them, or should we read just one of them? Because there are some differences. Let's do it both. All right. Matthew 8:5. When Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. And that's one of the reasons why there are some scholars that feel like this is something that we've already studied back in John 4, because it's in the town of Capernaum and some of the similarities are there. A centurion came to him asking for help. Lord, my servant lies at home paralyzed, suffering terribly. Jesus said to him, shall I come and heal him? The centurion replied, Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes. And that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed and said to those following him, truly, I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then Jesus said to the centurion, go, let it be done just as you believed it would. And his servant was healed at that moment. Okay, now Luke chapter 7. When Jesus had finished saying all this to the people who were listening, he entered Capernaum. There, a centurion's servant whom his master valued highly was sick and about to die. The centurion heard of Jesus and sent some elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come and heal his servant. When they came to Jesus, they pleaded earnestly with him, this man deserves to have you do this because he loves our nation and has built our synagogue. So Jesus went with them. He was not far from the house when the centurion sent friends to say to him, Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. That's why I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes. And that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him. And turning to the crowd following him, he said, I tell you, I have not found such great faith, even in Israel. Then the men who had been sent returned to the house and found the servant well. Okay, so you can see there are some parts of those two accounts that are almost verbatim identical. And there are some subtle differences. What is a centurion?
A Roman commander.
A Roman commander. Okay, he is a Roman soldier. He may be Italian. He may be from someplace else in the world, but he is definitely not a Jew. They wouldn't have done that. So a centurion, depending on which commentators you believe, were either over 100 people, as a centurion might suggest, or 80 men, which I don't get that. That should be like an Octavian or something else, not centurion. But it's a position of some power and authority in the Roman military, to have 80 or 100 men underneath your care. Centurions were career military men. They had a lot of responsibility, and sometimes they had managed to amass a good amount of wealth. And again, as we've seen just in the last chapter, there is a fair amount of contrast between the faith of this Gentile soldier and the faith of Jesus' own people. Jesus says he has never seen anything like it. The Greek says that Jesus marveled. The Greek word is thaumazo. It's this same thing that happens when there's a major storm where people are just kind of shocked and surprised and sort of overwhelmed. It's wondering with great admiration. Jesus is surprised and pleased to find such faith in anyone, but especially in somebody who doesn't have a Jewish heritage. In Matthew's record, one of the differences is what he includes in verse 11. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west, and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. What Matthew records is that Jesus really is saying that this Gentile has found his way to faith in God. Amazing, remarkable, surprising faith. This is the first time that we see Jesus engaging with Gentiles. But he says that there will be many in the kingdom who are going to be thrown out. There are a bunch of people who have believed that they're in when they really aren't in. And they're going to be surprised to find out that they aren't in. They will have said things like, "Oh, Lord, Lord, Lord." And he will say, "I don't know who you are. Get out. You don't have faith. You don't have obedience." Out into darkness where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. That phrase, weeping and gnashing of teeth, in many places is used to describe extreme anguish and total, utter despair of people who are consigned to condemnation, eternal condemnation. What's it like on the outside of heaven, wherever it is, however it is? Well, the answer is it's weeping and gnashing of teeth and darkness. It is pain and suffering. It is absolute despair. There is no hope. There is no joy. Jesus says, unless you have faith, and we would already say obedience, then you're going to be thrown outside of the kingdom.
So I have a comment, kind of a comment question. It's like when I was working up on base, and we used to get guys that would get out of active duty, but worked on the flight line, and they'd come over to the hangar to work. And we didn't like that situation because we didn't do flight line work. We tore the wings off of these airplanes. We got into the guts, and that's something that they had never experienced. But they were saying, well, when we did this on the flight, it's like, so we had to unlearn it. We had to unteach them all of these things in order to get them on the path of, this is what you need to do here and now, because I wonder if that centurion, because he wasn't Jewish and wasn't steeped in all the traditions, but heard about all the good that he was doing, he wasn't bogged down by
He
all of that.
He didn't have to go through
he didn't have
re-education.
to learn anything.
Hey, maybe.
Well, yeah, they've been raised Jewish, and now he's telling them to live a different way.
I think this centurion is sort of an anomaly in Jesus' time. He is a Roman military guy, career military guy. You know how they are, the career military guys.
Rude and crude.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking at them.
Yeah, speaking from experience.
He has, but he's not like. I think Jesus is absolutely right. I haven't ever seen anything like this before. We'll see it again later on in the New Testament, but
I don't think he was Italian. That's part of the reason.
Why?
Because he might have, even though he wasn't Jewish, Gentile, he probably was born and raised in the region.
maybe.
Somewhere.
That is absolute wild speculation and conjecture, but we can't say that it didn't happen.
Yeah. That's just.
Well, I think he loved that, the servant or the son so much, he would do whatever. We would. We had a son, we would do whatever. We'd go to a stranger. We wouldn't be afraid to approach anybody if they could heal that child.
In Luke's record, he says that that Jewish leaders come, elders from the village where the centurion lives, they come to talk to Jesus. Matthew just says that the centurion talks to him in first person. Luke has it that he sends respected Jewish elders of the town to come, but they come with this message to say, this man who's not a Jew, this man deserves to have you do this because he loves our nation. He has built our synagogue. This guy is so worthy of your attention and time. He is such a good man. And that seems to be like the sort of the underscore. He is worthy of your time and attention. He deserves your answer and your presence. The word means that it is befitting, it is entirely appropriate, and it's sort of the logical conclusion. This man, and again, we don't know exactly what all of it means, but he loves the nation, he loves the race of the Jews, he loves those people, and he has even built their synagogue. I mean, that's kind of a big deal. If he paid for it to be built all on his own, I mean, that is a major benefactor. That's worthy of your picture on the wall with a little brass plate and a light on it at all times. He's provided this for these people because he cares about them. And so I sort of speculate that these Jewish leaders feel like they are indebted to him because of how he has treated their people. He's been a good friend, built a place for them to worship and be taught. This is a really good guy. And so, Jesus, you should use your power to give him whatever he wants.
Well, it doesn't sound like he is Italian, like the most of the Italian.
Well, as we know from totally fact-based movies like The Gladiator,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, anybody from any of the lands that Rome had conquered could become a soldier and rise up through the ranks. You didn't have to be Italian. It probably helped, but there were people from all over who were a part of the Roman military mission.
That's what I'm saying, this guy may have known the Jews more intimately prior to his military service.
Maybe he had
But
been
that's-
stationed there
Again,
for 20
that's
years.
just,
Yeah, if he'd been not TDY, but if he'd been assigned to Judea and Galilee for most of his career, absolutely, he would have come to understand that. So whether it is the plea of the centurion himself in person, or of the Jewish leaders from the town, Jesus says, "All right, well, let's go." He and his followers begin to make their way to his home. But Luke says before they can get all the way to the house, the soldiers send some other friends out to meet him with a message. The message is, "I'm not worthy of your presence. Just say the word. I know my servant will be healed." I think that probably says a lot about this soldier. He may be a very proud Roman soldier, but when it comes to Jesus, he recognizes his own unworthiness, and now that he's had this double dose of humility to point out that Jesus has authority and power, and he has worth, and he himself, the Roman soldier, doesn't have any. When the Roman soldier is saying that Jesus doesn't need to come into his house, it could be that he is trying to prevent some negative comments that could be aimed at Jesus. As a Jew, Jesus has no business going into the house of a Gentile. If he would have done that, people would have pointed fingers and accused him of all sorts of things. His enemies would always do that all the time. Yeah. It's not new information. Whatever Jesus does, we don't like, we'll find fault with it. So it could be that this Roman centurion has been stationed there long enough that he understands that Jews and Gentiles don't mix that way socially.
Right.
And so, Jesus, you don't need to come in. You just stand outside and say the word. I know that'll be good enough.
If you come inside, the neighbors are gonna talk.
Mrs. Kravitz is watching.
Authorities, the Pharisees.
Yeah.
So this is completely a aside, not terribly important.
However,
But part of the Catholic Mass, you say this, you say, Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only say the word and your servant shall be healed.
Really?
You say that 3 times in a row during Mass.
that's interesting.
At least when I was growing up, it may be different now.
The Roman centurion's speech is a part of a Catholic liturgy.
Yes.
Interesting.
You're referring to yourself, but it does use those almost exact words.
And all I can hear is Wayne and Garth going, we're not worthy, we're not worthy, we're not worthy. Very different experiences. Catholic ways and Wayne and Garth. Okay. So Jesus makes this comment about the Roman soldiers' faith. Like, I haven't seen anything like this in Israel. He is not so much making a comment about the lack of faith among Jews. He's not looking down on Jewish faith. You know, he's not like shaming them. He actually is pleasantly surprised and shocked by what he finds in this Roman. And you would expect, we'd like to think that we'd expect that from the Jews who have had exposure to and interaction with Almighty God in heaven over and over again, generation after generation, you would think, well, yeah, of course they have faith in God. They've seen him over and over again. He's walked them through the wilderness. He brought them out of slavery. He's done all these kinds of things for them in the last 1,000 years or 2,000 years. Absolutely, the Jews should have faith. But this joker over here, wow. I mean, that's awesome. I have never seen faith like this where I expect it the most. Certainly not in a place where I don't expect it at all.
So is this the only time Jesus interacts with a military person or Gentile?
Is this the only time he interacts with Gentiles or military people before the end?
There's the Syro-Phoenician woman who asked for her daughter to be healed.
He does interact with some other Gentiles.
But no more
And-
soldiers.
And certainly by the time you get to the book of Acts, you see another Roman, Cornelius in Acts chapter 10, who is converted, even though Peter doesn't want anything to do with it. You know, he gets the vision of the sheet that comes down and goes up and goes down. You know, don't call anything unclean that I have declared clean. That is the official opening of the eyes of Peter and the rest of the church leadership to say Gentiles can come in. But here, Jesus really Jesus is moved by the faith of somebody who is not a Jew. Certainly somebody who would not have been loved or appreciated by the Jews just on the surface. But this righteous man, this pious Roman, I think it's the beginning of the truth that righteous, devoted Gentiles are a part of God's kingdom. We're not. This is not a Jews only club. This is for everybody. And really, we've sort of seen that, especially in Luke's gospel, since the very beginning. I mean, who are the first people to hear the news that this Messiah has been born?
Shepherds.
Shepherds, unclean, dirty outcasts.
Nomads.
And then we read in then the rest of the birth narrative that the Magi come from the east, probably from Babylon, somewhere way east of there. They're not Jews. They are definitely foreigners, Gentiles. They bring offerings and they worship the Messiah. And again, we'll see that this trend is going to continue on into the beginning of the church. That's not just for the Jews. You don't have to become a Jew to become a follower of Jesus. Anybody can come. All you have to do is believe and obey.
So Jesus didn't anoint him or baptize him or preach to him and win him over.
He already believed. He already believed that Jesus had some kind of divine power and authority to bring healing.
From a distance.
From a distance.
But they were in the midst of the Jews all the time, so I would think as, Jesus was becoming known, he could have been sitting on his horse listening.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And he would be more objective, not being a Jew, not having
Right.
anything.
That's what I
in
was
his
saying
mind,
before,
yeah,
about
to
he didn't
just-
have to unlearn anything in
Right,
order to,
right,
in order,
exactly.
because his knowledge of Jesus started at this point, when he didn't have any of that.
Yeah, he was able to see him for who
Yeah.
he was.
Okie doke. That's all we've got for today. It seems like that's plenty. What are you grabbing from Jesus today?
His power is,
Choose the narrow road.
No matter how hard
Action,
it
not
is.
words.
nothing good is easy.
Nothing good is easy.
That centurion was part of it, that was last week's standard lesson.
Oh, yeah.
About faith.
All right. Well, we will pick up here next week, same place, same time. If you don't happen to be here just yet, or you're watching this later, you'll know that you missed out on lunch that starts at 12 today. Hopefully, we'll have a good crowd today for the adult lunch. There will be lots of other things going on. The weather's supposed to be weird. We have a work day scheduled for outside on Saturday, but if it's raining, don't come, because we won't be here. Nobody's going to stand on the roof in a rainstorm. So, or plant flowers or mow the yard or things. Okay, well, if you missed anything, you can always go back and watch it again here on the YouTube channel. That'll about do it. Glad you're here. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Adios.